McNeil, Bob Weibel, and Ted Blackman. My name is Eva Leos, and I will serve as moderator and question participant person. So I would like to ask you to know that we have an opportunity for questions. This webinar does allow for conversation and opportunity to interact with each other. So I encourage you to take some notes, to jot your questions down, and prepare for the future conversation to learn more about how Fiatech is moving forward and as we are preparing for 2017. Deb, go ahead.
Thanks, Eva. Excuse me. I apologize. I apologize for my voice this morning. I woke up with laryngitis, so hopefully it'll last through the webinar. Our objectives today are to bring you up to speed on what's been going on in Fiatech in 2016. Our goal is to share ideas and options that are available to you to maximize the value your company gets from Fiatech membership, and just provide an opportunity for more engagement with Fiatech and the initiative. So, real quick, the agenda is we're going to talk just a few minutes about Voice of the Owner, make sure everyone understands what it is, what we're up to, and how you can join. Then Bob Weibel is going to give us an update on the Fiatech Construction Industry Institute collaboration. We'll spend the bulk of the time talking about the productivity advancement target teams and what they're up to, where we are, and all the exciting work that's beginning to happen there. And we'll talk about the Technology Showcase Conference coming up in April and the CETI Nominations. And then at the end, we'd really like to get your opinions on any benefits or concerns you'd have around forming a Voice of the EPC or a Voice of the Solution Provider Forum. And that'll make more sense a little bit after I talk about Voice of the Owner. So that's what we're going to be up to today. So basically, Voice of the Owner Operator is a subset of the Fiatech membership. We meet about monthly to discuss opportunities and challenges that we face as owner-operators. We share what improvement opportunities we're working on within our companies, what the challenges are, and where we can leverage and work together to accelerate resolving those challenges. Topics are proposed by the members, and we have an open dialogue and record our sessions so that it can be shared and leveraged. One of my challenges to the EPC technology providers on the phone is most of you do own and operate facilities. So the question I have is, have you engaged the operations end of your business in Fiatech, and would they benefit from becoming members of this group? So just to give you an idea of the things we've talked about since we formed, I'm not going to read the list, but each company has the opportunity to bring forward a challenge or something they've learned and share that. And out of those conversations, really, towards the end of the year last year and early this year, we really drove the conversations around why can't we make this change happen? We said, well, let's put the money on the table. That was the conversation number 13 there, which drove the development of the project cost improvement model, which eventually led to the productivity advancement target. So hopefully you see something there that interests you. And again, challenges to get everybody involved, because I know we're all owners in some way, shape, or form. So, Bob, you want to give an update on the Fiatech-CII collaboration?
Yes, thank you, Deb. Fiatech, as you probably may know, originally came out of the Construction Industry Institute back in 2000. Over the years, we've looked at different models of working together, and it was decided this past spring that we would look at coming up with a new governance structure between the two organizations. In that collaborative effort, we have been working together on several things, including combining our annual meeting that comes up in the spring with the CII Spring Board meeting, and looking at ways that we can take the work that we do in technology and provide that as a collaborative piece that inside CII, which has identified technology as critical to the future of the Construction Industry Institute's work. We have a board committee together with CII's board that are finalizing the terms of the collaborative agreement and the governance structure. 2017 we will be starting to put that in place, and in 2018 we will be totally operational under that system. We see it as a nice blending of the strengths of both organizations and providing more services to our collective members. We wanted to cover under PATS some of our progress forward. Our leadership forum, which was held this September in New Orleans, was indeed, and of course, of all of our leadership forums are our members' meetings. This was an opportunity to really have the first face-to-face meetings of each of our 12 productivity advancement target teams, and Deb's going to go on the PATS if you're unfamiliar with them. What we accomplished was setting up actual priorities in terms of their work, and some of them have begun to identify projects that they may be working on in the near future. And we came up with a structure, what we call the PAT Slack sites, which is a tool that we use to work online collectively on moving each of our targets forward. And if you go to the next one. These are the 12 teams. Each of them had a breakout session. And among the things we decided was that we wanted to move PAT 3 and PAT 4 together, integrated project planning and integrated project management. So we are actually in the process of blending those two teams together. And several others will be working more collaboratively in the future. But we do indeed have each of those 12 teams operational. They started their first meetings in May of this year and are into their third and fourth sessions, having had the nice face-to-face session in New Orleans. We go next. And this is yours.
Okay, so real briefly, in case you have not seen the PAT work, Productivity Advancement Target work, I'll give you a chance.
This describes the Productivity Advancement Target teams in a little more detail. You just saw the list. These are the target goals that were established last year and were vetted over the course of the year. PAT 3 and 4 you're seeing are the two that are being combined, and they both actually had the same target all along, and that's the work we've done. If we want to go to the next, we'll show the balance of the PAT teams. And these are the others, 7 through 12, and the success enablers Deb will describe in a minute, but these are the actual functions that are taken that in some cases they may be a technology, in some cases they may be the application of a technology or how a company is prepared to absorb and put a technology in place. These are the various tools that enable a company to meet the target that we've identified. Go to the next. And so the PAT team goal is for Fiatech member companies to have context and knowledge in order to improve the advancement of that target. Each of the teams is going to be cataloging the existing technology and work processes and that actually meet those and sharing those with each other, and then identifying gaps. And those gaps are what we're going to be using to generate projects for Fiatech moving forward. And the desired result, overall result, if you take all of the 12 PATs, is to see a 25% reduction in investment costs with a 10% improvement in the time cycle in order to do work. Next. And PAT team accountability. We identify each of the PAT teams to identify the success enablers, which we've already done. We're cataloging existing practices and behaviors. We're sharing those technologies with each other, and we're charting the gap. That's what we said earlier, the gaps that we're going to be then using to identify projects. And those projects may be ones that we intake internally at Fiatech as ourselves. They may be projects that together with CII we undertake, or we may be reaching outside of Fiatech and CII and doing it with other organizations. And then we'll be developing assessment levels for practice and results. Next. This is the current PAT team leadership. Each PAT team is led by a owner, an EPC, and then in many cases we have a solution provider. The orange that you see are places where in some cases we have not yet identified an EPC or a solution provider. So if you happen to be an EPC or a solution provider and are interested in any of these 12 PATs, please get in touch with us. You can get in touch with Deb McNeil, myself, or Eva Leos to express that interest. So that is how they're moving forward. Each PAT team meets at least monthly. And again, as I mentioned, we have the Slack site set up for us to be able to do that work online. Go to the next. So how can you engage? As a Fiatech member, you can be fully involved in each of the PAT teams and indeed be a part of, have access to the Slack site. The Slack site, which is the work site, is only available to Fiatech members. We have had other non-members get involved early on as a way to get them interested in becoming full members of Fiatech. And some of them have been industry experts who have provided us input on the success enablers. But the real work is rolling our sleeves up and moving forward with the PAT teams. So Leadership Forum, it was our first face-to-face. Some of our PAT teams will be meeting in conjunction with the annual conference in April. And we will be showcasing in the annual conference some of the progress being made by the various PAT teams in their work. Go to the next. So in terms of the PAT delivery status, right now we're including this collection of industry expertise and we're going through the success enablers to identify exactly where each company is in terms of being able to make use of that tool. And then we'll be identifying gaps in knowledge and credibility, and then of course for each PAT will be what we call a gap closure plan, and that's where these future Fiatech projects or projects in collaboration with others will be generated, and then the gap closure delivery will be over the course of time. I think really we're looking at in the course of between now and the spring and the annual conference, we will have identified many best practices to share them with other people who are on the PAT teams and indeed with other Fiatech members. And we will probably have several PAT teams that have identified projects that will be taken into consideration for Fiatech for the fall or into 2018. We'll go to the next. So this is what the Success Enabler looks like. This is a self-assessment matrix tool that a subgroup of our PAT leader team came up with. The text does your organization, in this case systematically capture whole costs associated with project materials, management activities, and compare and should cost models to identify waste and prioritize refinement priorities. That's an enabler. And each of these are numbered. These are out of our PAT-7 productivity advancement target team. So you get the success enabler down one side. Then to help us categorize this, we say, is this enabler something that has to do with people, process, or technology? So you see the boxes have been marked. And then we came up with a scale, which we'll cover in a second, on the capability level. So as you're using this inside your company, you would say, well, where are we with this? 0 is that this is not an applicable success enabler to us at all. 1 is that we're actually using it as an individual inside the company. 2 is it's actually being used by a team inside the company. 3 is the company is using it regionally, 4 it's using it nationally, and 5 is if the company is using it globally. So you can see the levels here in the same way as in terms of it's ad hoc, it's repeated, it's documented, it's measured, it's optimized, each of the ways. So your greatest use of an enabler is a 5 and also a 4. One of the things that we identified very early on is that many of the tools that should be used many of the enablers out there to make these targets we've set realities actually have been done by somebody somewhere. It's just there is no central place to capture that knowledge and share it with the industry. And that's, of course, what we're trying to do with our team. And if we go to the next. So here is an example of, well, again, this is now being filled in. So Dow gave us an example of taking the integrated materials management, which is PAT 7, and they filled this out for themselves, and they've shared this. So you can see that their current capability on that first enabler is only a 1. It's not a 5. They then put some text in as to why is it a 1? What's the situation? And then the next column over gave them where they want it to be. What would they like it to be? So they identified it as a 5, and then they said their relative priority is to as is to a 2B status, and then they identified the actions that they're going to take. So that's exactly what each company has now. Everybody has now received their PAT self-assessment tool. They're all going through that. We're actually, in some cases, because a few, as we'll note later, for example, PAT Team 2 has 38 enablers. We're consolidating those into a more reasonable number to review. But this is our work that's actually going on in December and January right now.
So, Bob, let's let Deb go a little bit in depth on this. Deb, can you give us a little more detail as to how you all came about to accomplish this example?
Sure. One of the things that Dow is working on is we've recently put a new SAP system on the ground, and we're really looking at how do we use our engineering tools to feed that system for procurement, and then how do we manage materials in the field. So integrated materials management is a PAT that we're very interested in. We began taking the success enablers, as Bob said, and the big value is to get a multifunctional, multidiscipline group together to talk about, well, where are we? Do we have this or not? And in a lot of cases in this area, in Dow, we found that we have some elements in limited places, but we have not really put robust global solutions on the ground and used them consistently. So a lot of the value in this self-assessment is the conversation you have internally. The secondary value is then sharing that across companies to see where the industry gaps are, which is really what the work of the productivity advancement team is. So I think when we met a year ago, we said that we think the industry has 70 to 80% of the knowledge it needs and the technology it needs to drive the productivity advancement targets. We just haven't put it in the right context for owners and EPCs to use. So that's really the goal of the PAT team, is to provide enough context that someone who wants to work in an improvement area does not have to start from scratch. They can start with, oh, okay, this is what I need to have in the ground. Well, where am I, and how do I go about getting there? So we're finding the self-assessment matrix to be very valuable here at Dow. So I think, Ted, you're going to talk about the work that PAT 2 is doing?
Well, that's correct. All right, so with PAT 2, it's all about reducing owner-initiated change orders. Now, this is one of the areas where it's inevitable. Change is inevitable, but how do we reduce the negative impact of those changes? And the target here is conservatively estimated at $16 million. I think, in all honesty, this is an area where we're going to find some significant gaps. But as a quick plug for recruitment, we're looking for more people to get engaged with this PAT as well. And so it's an area where very much change often starts. It's not the only source of change, but change often starts with process changes. And how does an owner know at what point, having that flexibility as you're in the early design iterations, you need to have the flexibility to be able to make changes, but how can we better know and manage those changes when they occur, but also better inform owners in terms of, as the project's evolving, at what point should they freeze the design? And most people don't know this. It's counterintuitive, but one of the reasons I'm excited about this, Pat, is often if you freeze part of a design too early, you're actually initiating change when something else may change that changes that. And so in terms of getting the collaboration going, with PAT 2 and as with all the PATs, each PAT has its collaboration site. I'd like to emphasize that getting into the Slack site is key. We don't want to replace the coordination and collaboration process, but having a place to put stuff, having a place to log comments, as well as information that's generated. So Deb, if you go to the next slide, it's not just, if you haven't been on Slack, it's a bit like a Skype or a Yammer. You can make comments, but it's also got a nice feature to serve as a collaborative portal. And so Deb, if we jump to the next slide, there's a couple of examples of two pieces of information that's already been posted up onto the Slack site. One from Brian Lyons and another from Saul Hernandez, who have been engaged in the PAT to date. And we're soon going to get something posted from Mike Pye. And so as we either generate videos or slide decks, as well as do our analyses, that Slack site can serve as a place to warehouse that material for Fiatech members to have access to, so that even if you miss a presentation, it's easy to get to. And again, it does allow and facilitate a threaded discussion around the topics. And as we talk about the success enablers, each of the individual enablers themselves have a threaded discussion where comments can come into that. And Deb, if you go to the next slide, that's where we're now getting into. This is where we're at within our PAT. Bob had mentioned earlier, within PAT 2, we've got a healthy list of enablers. We've already, as a fairly small team of individuals, done some analysis that suggests that it'd be good to consolidate some of the areas. We're looking at categorization and have come up with 3 categories, but would also really like to get more Fiatech members and even potentially non-members involved in reviewing those set of success enablers that we have before we go too far with the consolidation. So I'd really encourage anyone who's interested in helping out and getting engaged with PAT 2, reach out to me. Don't feel that the Slack or the has to be the only way to access it as well. We've got a version of the enablers into a spreadsheet that for those that are potentially wanting to be Fiatech members, want to get a chance to get involved and see what it's like to get involved. We can make access to the enablers through a spreadsheet for you to mark up. And also, to Deb's point earlier about bringing a multidisciplinary team together, you're having access to the list of enablers in a spreadsheet makes it easy to share it with your team and collaborate in a meeting and mark it up and go through it. So we'll use Slack as a warehousing tool, not just a data capture tool. And so, but going back to the engagement point, here to engage, here to talk with those that are on the call that may be interested to ask more questions, either with PAT 2 or any of the other PATs. It's I think a new step in a new direction for Fiatech and in a exciting time in the transition into 2017. So Deb, that's all I had to say.
Yeah, so I think one of the opportunities here is, one of the things I want to make sure folks are clear on is we don't see this as a sequential process. So, we're going to spend a little bit of time on simplifying the success enablers before we start really gathering data around them. But we're not waiting, right? The teams are already having the conversations around what do we already know how to do, who knows it, how do we get them engaged, excuse me, and then what gaps do we already know we have, and how do we turn those into projects that bring value to the members. So I think, again, I think that we've made a major step. Teams are formed and working. All the teams have active members, more the merrier. So I really would love to encourage everybody on the phone, if you're not already engaged in a PAT, to really take a look at which PATs bring value to your company. If not you directly, is there someone else in your company who is working in that improvement area for you and or has knowledge that the industry can benefit from? So if you go out to the Fiatech website, again, you'll get a copy of these slides today, but you'll also be able to get more details on the targets themselves. And then any Fiatech member can join any Slack. It's been set up that you can go out there and join and get engaged. So with that, the next big thing coming up beyond the PAT teamwork is the Technology Showcase Conference, and let Eva talk about that and the CETI Award.
Thank you. So yes, we are very excited. 2017 will bring us many interesting aspects, not just the collaboration that we are working closer with CII and the University of Texas, but also we will have the opportunity to recognize those companies that have had massive accomplishments in engineering and technology and innovation, and that is why we do the CETI Awards. We are accepting nominations until the end of the week, and for those of you that are on the call, if this is the first time that you've heard about it and you have a project in your company that has been completed and you believe that you could share about that and maybe you can't get it done between now and Friday, reach out to me and let me know if there might be an opportunity for a submission. I could possibly be flexible, give you a couple extra days in order to get that in, because we really want to recognize our members, our collaborators, and those companies who have a real fabulous accomplishment that they have done in maybe the last 12 or 18 months. So this is a great opportunity for not only us to learn about these wonderful, innovative accomplishments, but also to have other people work collaboratively together to continue those types of accomplishments, which is one of the aspects that Fiatech is all about. How do we make sure to bring innovation into the everyday process? And the CETI definitely recognizes that. This CETI the awards presentation takes place at the 2017 annual conference, which there is a slide forward on that. And this will take place April 10th through the 12th in Orlando, Florida. We are very excited because we are looking to really bring about interactive demonstrations. These are a little bit more interactive than just a video or just a graphic or on a piece of paper that someone can describe to you, but actually something that we can interface, interact, touch, feel, experience about the unique technologies that might be coming up, the technology that just came available on the market, and there will be education sessions on proven case studies about how unique and new technology maybe 5 years ago has now been incorporated into the work processes and how it has helped save costs, increase efficiency, reduce risk, and then those types of futuristic methods that companies are considering doing to enhance how technology is currently helping them. So that's how we will focus on the educational aspect. We will have an increased collaboration with CII members, so there will be a greater number of different companies that will participate in the 2017 conference. And then, of course, we always have meaningful networking and connections. It's a great place, great opportunity to learn from each other, to continue the conversation, to not only acquaint yourself with new people, but reacquaint yourself with those peers and collaborators that you have worked with in the past. The details about this event is on this bit.ly URL, and it's also available on the fiatech.org website, so you can access it in a variety of ways. And the Fiatech staff and our various volunteers and PAT leaders are always available to help if you have a thought, a question, a concern. We are here to help enable you and your company to get to Orlando next year so that we can share together and continue to learn about the processes and the technology that will help us be a better industry at large. And so I encourage you to register, make plans. If you want to exhibit, we would love to have you, and we really believe that this year's event will be more interesting, more insightful, and generally a lot of fun. So Deb, I believe we have some questions we wanted to ask the audience.
Yes, we do. Before we jump in there, has anyone submitted a question on chat, or do you want
Not at this point.
Able to go on unmute folks, Eva, or not?
I can unmute everybody. Yes.
Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, all of you on the call, I have unmuted you. So, if you would like to ask a question, this is your time. There probably will be a lot of background noise because inevitably everybody is probably working and doing their webinar.
They do. I'm going to bring that up to the.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we need to go back and unmute again and submit your questions in chat. There seems to be a lot of background noise. Thanks.
Okay, so that's what I'll do. No
so,
problem.
Does anyone have any questions before we ask our questions? Does everyone know how to get to the chat window, I hope?
I believe so.
Okay.
So at this point, no one has any questions, but I think we should go ahead and open the discussion and see if anybody would like to type something in as we go, and maybe we can talk about it. Ted can jump in on it too.
Okay, so the first question we'd like to ask is, I believe as an owners group within Fiatech, we're getting a lot of value out of Voice of the Owner. Again, it's talking to your peer group around the common challenges you're facing. So the first question really is, does anyone on the line have see a value for a Voice of the AEC/EPC group? If you could give us your thoughts in chat. And then in the solution providers on the line also, is there a value for having a sub-team of solution providers so that you can argue and vent about how hard it is to work with the owners? That would be good. That would be a good conversation to have, I think. But any thoughts on that? Since we had you on the phone, we thought we'd ask.
So Ted, in this situation, you do span a lot of different, you interact with a lot of different groups. What do you think about potentially having a voice of the EPC or a voice of the solution provider?
Yeah, I've got some really interesting ideas around that. I was, some time ago had strongly recommended having a forum like a Voice of an Owner, having participated in Fiatech since its early days, even pre-conception. And I say this without wanting to offend anybody, but there's generally been this mode of owners going, hey guys, I got a big problem. I mean, it's what the PATs are all about. Why isn't my productivity getting better? We know there's technology out there. All right, as an EPC or as a GC firm, we know you guys are adopting stuff, but scratching my head, why aren't we seeing significant productivity gains? And then meanwhile, the EPCs and service providers are generally jumping into Fiatech saying, well, hey, I solved that problem. And then I've sat back and pondered, well, if they were already solved, why are we still seeing the productivity, even now with Fiatech being into over a decade long? So I think to the question, what I would really love to see fostered is the owner forum, the voice of the owner coming out with, which in a sense these PATs represent, hey, I've got this stuck point. Here's an area we want to see this big, hairy, audacious goal met, and then slicing that down into pieces. What do you have in this area? And then providing a forum in which the EPCs as well as then the solution providers, either hand in hand or separately, could come out with, all right, here's how we do address that. And so with the PATs that have been lined up and with these enablers, I'd really like to see where does either a capacity within a service delivery organization or within a organization that's supplying basic tech or other services as a solution into the the primary drivers of the project management, which is the AEC-EPC group, being able to respond to things that are coming out of the voice of the owner. I mean, in it themselves, it probably makes sense to have their own voice, but they tend to have some level of a competitive aspect of looking to supply that capability into the owners. So I see there being a real play between the voice of the owner over to the other groups.
I agree, and there is a couple of responses. In fact, Simon Hafatu is going to also jump in. I've unmuted his line, so Simon, you can go ahead and let us know your thoughts.
Thank you, Eva. I was struggling with the mute-unmute button. So yeah, I tend to agree with Ted on the AEC-EPC group. I think it makes sense because there are probably concerns and discussions that could take place. The only question I have is, would they be in a situation to talk freely? Because at the end, their business is as well to answer what the owners are requiring. So I think it's really I don't think it's easy to answer to that question with many ears listening to the call. And I think this could be actually a good question to ask and let the AEC-EPC companies discuss between them to define if they think there is value for them to talk about it. And I think we're going to have the same, I'm talking here now as a solution provider, we might have exactly the same feeling on the solution standpoint. At the end, we are our purpose is, of course, at the very end, is to sell solutions. And if we just talk between us, we are obviously in a competitive situation. So for us, it's very good to have the owners driving the discussions. But I cannot tell you right now if I can answer that question. I would need to have, let's say, one-on-one discussion with other solution providers, maybe in appropriate set of discussion to be able to answer to that question. I have the feeling that for the solution provider, I'm not sure there is a lot of benefits to talk with without any additional years, but that's my first thought, and I would like to discuss that.
Yeah, I guess, Simon, to me, the challenge is, so this conversation we're having, right, is an example of a conversation, right? So I think from the owner's perspective, what we're struggling with is we're all working on different pieces of the pie within our company. So we can't all come to you and say, okay, the owners first want to work on problem one, right? And then everybody runs around problem one. So I think the big thing we're missing when we talk to each other is a common context, and I'm really hoping the PAT format gives us that, so we can say, okay, who's interested in working on integrated materials management now, right? And let's go work that one slice of the pie together. It's a very complex puzzle to solve. So, but I agree. I understand the concerns around competitiveness. I mean, we are competitors also, but we're focusing our conversations on work process where we don't compete, right? Work process improvement and stuff. So. But yeah,
so there's been a.
Go ahead, Eva. Sorry.
There was a couple of comments in the question box from our listeners, and a few of them have echoed what Simon mentioned in reference to the importance of how PAT can serve as a vehicle to begin to accomplish that alignment with the owners, but not more of a subset conversation. Probably in a more informal fashion would be helpful, and not so much of a consistent reoccurring component. So perhaps we will reach out to our solution providers and potentially our AEC EPCs and ask them if they want to have a time to have a conversation at the annual conference, like a face-to-face, just see if they can interface with other owners that say, hey, what are your top 3 things that are causing issues or problems that we might want to discuss together while we're all here and share intellectual capital or not. So maybe that's something that we offer as a value add as a subset of the voice of the owner.
I think that's a really good idea, Eva. Maybe we'll just find an hour we can have those conversations, right?
Mm-hmm.
When we're face to face. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ted,
Any other questions?
do you think that would?
Go ahead.
There hasn't been any additional questions or comments posted at this time, so I think we, and I don't see any additional questions in reference to the entire webinar. That is the one area where if you have specific questions, we would love to hear from you. However, we do have a call for action, and that is we need you to join the PATS team if you're not already part of it. And you can reach out to contacts@fiatech.org. We will put you in touch with the right project manager, the right team leader, so that you can make sure to get involved, make progress, move forward on this alignment that we have been discussing, and that confusing component of how come we have not had change. Like Ted said, everybody talks about the change, and why haven't we had change? In addition to that, the other call to action is to attend the technology conference. And one of the areas on our question box that said is the attendee was looking to hear more about the new Fiatech.org governance and the details associated with that. So the reason that we put the slide at the beginning was to state that this is a work in progress. The governance group and task force that are coming together plan to release information at the technology conference in April, and April 2017. So this is a process that they are spending a great deal of time being very careful to ensure that the organization of Fiatech and CII continue to serve their members in the best possible way, while the governance of Fiatech's collaboration with CII is also coming together. So we appreciate your patience. We appreciate your support and your continued involvement with Fiatech and the productivity advancement targets as we continue to move forward. Collaboration collectively between owners, EPCs, solution providers is critical for our continued evolution. So bear with us. Let us know what we can do to continue to work together, and stay tuned. More information is coming about the future of Fiatech and how 2017 is going to be a spectacular year. So,
Thanks, Eva. I really appreciate it, and I echo Eva's thought. Come join the PATS. We're getting to work, and hopefully in April we'll have some really cool stuff to show you. So, thanks for attending.
Absolutely. Thank you all for attending, and stay tuned to Fiatech.org. We will have more webinars before the year ends, and then of course when 2017 starts, we are geared up to have quite a few additional webinars. So we look forward to seeing you soon. Feel free to email us at any time. We are here to continue to serve. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.